Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to Same Circle Wrestling Season 3. We had a relatively, I guess it would somewhat lengthy of a break between seasons. The last show we did was our SummerSlam special, and we are back shortly after Night of Champions, which was somewhat of a decent pay-per-view. I would say it was marginally better than some of the other ones we've seen in the past year. But I mean that's what I think of it, at least. So for season 3, we're probably just gonna do mostly the same shit we've been doing. Analyzing, talking about predictions. We got news that Lucha Underground season 2 is coming.
Woo! Yeah!
So that's gonna be phenomenal, and I can't wait for that.
Mexican Jesus has smiled upon us.
So,
I believe his name is Jesus.
do we want to go straight to Night of Champions, or do we want to talk maybe a little bit of the lead up? I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about on the way to Night of Champions. I think like the biggest thing that was like the mystery was who was going to be the partner for the Roman Reigns Dean Ambrose match. We saw a debut leading up to Night of Champions of a new Wyatt member.
Beef Stroganoff.
He's basically this big, like, just giant guy for literally no reason that hugs people.
Brawny strong man.
He's almost like a big dumb child, and like he has no real good moves. He just walks around like a drunk baby and then hugs you until you fall asleep.
Yeah,
That's a problem. He's got the baby face going on, and he is probably the world's least intimidating bearded giant.
Yeah, like that's why they gave him a mask to wear for some of the segments.
And I'm confused because when Bray Wyatt introduced him, he goes, "This is Abigail's gift." Like, what did Abigail give birth to him? She should get checked out. Maybe that's why she's a hologram and a ghost now, because she gave birth to a fucking demon.
Yeah, that whole like Wyatt backstory is just like so like vivid and shit. Like, there's literally no actual storyline to that. They have yet to actually clarify like the entire backstory of Bray Wyatt.
I don't know, I think he was a gift given to Abigail, and then she turned around and re-gifted him.
She Indian gave him to Bray. She's like, sorry, I don't want this.
The price tag's still on him.
And that's the problem, like, with the Wyatt family. They could have said something so much cooler, like, oh, we just found him in the swamp throwing trees out into the water. And it's like, no, it's a gift for my sister.
But to be fair, that was pretty much the exact origin they used for Harper and Rowan.
Yeah.
I mean, to be completely fair, his entrance to the scene was pretty cool with the lights going out, and then there's a mystery guy that isn't Eric Rowan, a.k.a. Upside Down Sheamus. It was cool to see a new face, but, I mean, he's not very agile for the big man. He's the one that makes the Big Show look like Usain Bolt.
Yeah, and like the thing about him is that he doesn't have to sell anything because he is just billed as like this big like immovable object, I guess I could say. And like you don't get to see like his skill set or anything like that because he doesn't have to do anything. I think the most he's done is like go over the top rope or something after that Roman Reigns Superman punch. I think it was on Raw or something. And it's kind of sad that we haven't been able to see anything that he can do yet besides hugging people and then that one move where he puts him on his shoulder and like flips him over or whatever.
Yeah, like the weird fireman carry thing.
Yeah.
It's so depressing to see a character like that on the screen when there's so many people that like, and this even goes to like Ambrose and Reigns, is the fact that you could have put anybody on their side and like taken an active roster person and put him in the Wyatt family. Like even Fandango would have made sense. Just get use out of somebody.
Yeah, like literally anyone is placeable in that as long as you just change their character a little bit.
Yeah, I mean we thought it was going to be like Bo Dallas for a while, so he could join his brother, and that made sense because Bo was kind of growing out a really shaggy beard for a little bit. You know, Adam Rose is Leo Kruger, that could have fit. Even Heath Slater threw his hat in the ring, but no, it's fucking a guy from NXT that no one has seen or heard of.
Well, like Bo Dallas would have been awesome. Like we actually saw Bo Dallas, I think it was Raw, and he did the same shit that he's been doing, and just come out, cut a shit promo, and then get his ass beat.
He's the new Damian Sandow.
Yeah, well, at least Bo Dallas is on there once in a while.
And that's the thing.
True.
I think it was the WWE, the YouTube channel. They had Bo Dallas cut a promo where he hinted at a little bit of a darker twist to his gimmick, and then he comes out on Raw, and that's all just nowhere to be seen.
They like to do that. They like to try to commit to something, and then they just don't. Or they act like they're going to change something up, and then never happens. So we'll go right into Night of Champions. The kickoff show started with this new... Apparently, I feel like Stardust and the Ascension are kind of like together now, like officially, sort of. And Neville and the Lucha Dragons were their opponents. It's kind of this... They're like billing it as like this whole heroes versus villains type thing, comic book thing, as they've been doing for the last couple pay-per-views, or at least since SummerSlam. So, I mean, like, that was not a bad match. Obviously, when you got, like, the Lucha Dragons and Neville, you're not going to get a bad match. But Stardust and the Ascension win. That's just going to carry on as a feud, I believe.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool, because we've been trying to see what Stardust can bring to the table. I mean, he put on a pretty damn good match with John Cena, and he still fell to, Stephen Amell? And then all of a sudden you have Stardust trying to play the villain role against Neville, which is cool, because I don't think there's anybody in the stands who dislikes Neville. He's about as pure a babyface as they have on the roster.
Yeah, and so are the Lucha
it's
Dragons.
Cool dynamic. Oh yeah, like, I honestly can't even think of anything other than the fact that, like, they never get to win, like they did in NXT. But other than that, I mean, they're so entertaining and so purely on the good side that it's a fun match to watch, but I mean, WWE is not going to invest enough in the story to make that even watchable.
Well, it's also nice to get the Ascension back into the system, because like they've been just on the bench sorta, and I think the Ascension, like, they got like a bunch of backlash from the fans, but like the problem nowadays is that WWE listens to the fans too much, instead of just, because like back in the day you could just push a guy and like he'd either be over or not. And if you want a guy to be over, you can get him over just by pushing him. Kind of like the New Day. Like, no one really liked the New Day when you initially, build them, put them out there and debuted them. And now it's like the New Day is a big thing now. And it's just because they kept rolling with it. And I think if they did the same thing with the Ascension, it'd work.
Yeah, I do think that that's a good role for the Ascension as Stardust's lackeys. I mean, it makes Stardust a little more important. It gives the Ascension something to do. Thematically, they could be linked together. I do kind of wish that they could make them a little bit of a bigger deal, but at the same time, I think the stable space might be a little crowded on the heel side, so I can understand why they are where they're at, but I just hope that it doesn't end up holding Stardust or anything back, being in the feud that low on the card.
Yeah.
I do think it belongs a little further up than where it is, but I can see why it is where it is, and I can't really find any issues to have with the booking of it so far, really.
Like, I'd rather see Stardust and the Ascension and Neville and the Lucha Dragons than the Dolph Ziggler and Rusev storyline that's like dragging along, and it literally hasn't come to any conclusion or any sort of like peak. It's just sort of there just for them to both be on the card.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much play to make sure the Ascension still got FaceTime, to the point where, like, when they still had the original Undertaker and Brock Lesnar brawl, like, the Ascension were the first two guys sent out to break up the brawl. So clearly, like, they're trying to find a spot for them. But as you said, like the heel side of the tag team division is so stacked that, and they're not a group that's going to become a face anytime soon, because when they talk, they literally sound, stupid. So it's going to be hard to push them with any kind of legitimacy, but it's good to see that they're still being put on a pay-per-view. I just feel bad for the primetime players. They kind of dropped off the earth.
Yeah,
true.
They can't really be a babyface tag team. They'll be, I think, at the very the very most, they'll be like somewhat of a fan favorite. But like that's only if they get a decent push, and like I think they're a good enough tag team to do something like that. But now you got a tag team division that has just stepped up a notch with the Dudley Boys return, which we didn't even really talk about at the beginning, but they're back essentially full time, and that gives that tag team division a pretty solid boost, but it also knocks a few of these tag teams down a notch.
Well, I mean, it's the same as bringing up all 9 women into the Divas division and then pretty much making it Charlotte's game to lose. I mean, yeah, Charlotte's there because her dad was one hell of a wrestler. I mean, she is one hell of a wrestler too, but that name doesn't hurt her. So, I mean, it's kind of tough when you crowd them that quickly and bring in so many new tag teams that, I mean, I really hope that somehow that tag title becomes something of value to where it can kind of move around but not look like a hot potato garbage championship, because there's a lot of teams that could deserve some face time, holding the belts and, taking heat or taking on white heat for, a couple weeks.
Yeah. But after the kickoff show, we saw it started off pretty well. Night of Champions did, because you got the Ryback and Kevin Owens match for the Intercontinental title, which like really wasn't a bad match. I would have expected it to be a little bit better than it was, but it was nice to see Kevin Owens take the title because he needs to be carrying a belt at this point in time, I think. And Ryback had a little run. It was cool to have him get the belt. But Kevin Owens deserves to be carrying gold right now on the main roster.
The issue with Kevin Owens holding that belt is he takes that belt the same way Ryback did. I mean, short of them wanting a title individually, there was nothing tying them to the Intercontinental title. I mean, you watch Kevin Owens come out of that white-hot feud with the U.S. title. I mean, he drops the NXT title to Finn Balor in Japan. And now Kevin Owens is like, oh yeah, I'll take on this match with Ryback. Oh yeah, boom, I'll take this title from him. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of build-up, which makes it kind of cool that the title moved that quickly. But, I mean, it's kind of worrying what that's going to do to Ryback.
Well, yeah, you get the feeling that it was just like, oh, they'll throw, like, he's not going to carry the U.S. title because we want Cena to have the U.S. title. We'll just give him the Intercontinental title. We'll strap that shit on him. Like, he was not in any storylines that involved the Intercontinental Championship, and I see where you're coming from. It's strange that they just threw him into this match, but I like that they put the title on him, definitely, because you got a lot more potential, I think, with Kevin Owens carrying the belt than you do with Ryback, just because of the charisma factor.
Yeah. I mean, if they want the Intercontinental title to be the workhorse championship, since it looks like John Cena might not be continuing his Open Challenge series, then Kevin Owens is definitely the guy you want to go with that. And realistically, I have to wonder where they're going to go with it, because Kevin Owens' feuds so far have tended to have that more personal edge to them in the booking. And it just makes you wonder where they're going to go with it after he's out of this Ryback feud going forward, which I assume he'll come out of still holding the title. And it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of fodder for the types of feuds that they've been booking him in lately.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just feel like when Ryback was carrying the title, it didn't hold a lot of weight because Ryback didn't have, a feud to show himself off in. And I think with Kevin Owens, you can put him into a lot of places. There's a lot of pieces you can fit to make that title a little bit more relevant than it was with Ryback carrying it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to agree. I mean, the Kevin Owens taking everything personal thing can only really go, so far. There's only so many things that Kevin Owens can personally hate, unless he just hates everybody. Because he does kind of come out there like a lone wolf, but at the same point, it's kind of like, do you have a beef with everybody? Then why are you here? And it's kind of hard to make Kevin Owens stick. He's one hell of a wrestler, but it just seems like they can't stick him with anything that he can do for more than a month at a time.
Yeah, it's like he's a character that has problems with everybody, but he's like billed as a prize fighter, so you have to sort of he has to be carrying gold or at least be in pursuit of gold. And I think like it's nice because now you have Kevin Owens that like can elevate the belt, and then you have someone who can come up and grab that belt from him, and it's gonna look a lot better than Ryback winning it off of in a Miz and Big Show situation.
Yeah, you have to wonder. I mean, who realistically is in or near the IC title picture who is a face who isn't going to be losing that face status soon, as it looks like a Dolph Ziggler would be.
There isn't even really an Intercontinental picture right now, like.
Yeah.
It all left after WrestleMania. When Dean Ambrose went back up to the top of the title, Wade Barrett left to go do his movie after he lost at SummerSlam.
Oh, that's right. That's what I was wondering where he'd been.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. I haven't seen him in weeks.
I mean,
that movie just wrapped on Friday, so he could literally be back next week.
Oh, wow.
Well, you could put Cesaro in this spot. I mean, I'd be satisfied with Cesaro in the Intercontinental picture with Owens.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is they just had their own little mini feud that just ended before the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. Like, it's almost like what you guys are going to see on SmackDown tomorrow. And by the time the show goes up, it'll be in the past. But it's like the main event on SmackDown is Seth Rollins against Dean Ambrose. It's like, it's great, but if you keep showing us that match without anything attached to it, the moment you attach something and like something big happens, it's going to be devalued.
Yeah, exactly. To that end, I just saw a stat. If my numbers are right, they have given away John Cena versus Seth Rollins on free TV. Like, it was either 7 or 9 times. And if you count the pay-per-view matches, it's either 9 or 11 times that they fought just this year.
And it's never a bad match. It's not like we're arguing it's a bad match. It's just stale.
Yeah, it's too recycled.
I mean, you can keep refilling the same water bottle with tap water, but it doesn't make the water taste any better because the bottle says Dasani on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on. Dolph Ziggler and Rusev, we talked a little bit about it. It's like
boring.
It's too much now. Like, it just keeps dragging on. There's no story progression, and they just keep getting wins back and forth. It seems like Rusev is primarily on the losing end of this feud, and it's not doing anything for either of these guys.
Yeah, I said it's really lost Dolph Ziggler a lot of momentum. He's not very hot of a face right now. He looks a lot like a heel with his actions during this feud. And Rusev has just been turning chicken shit into chicken salad this entire time. I do really think I've seen a lot. He is winning a lot of people over in spite of the garbage they're giving him.
Yeah.
And I really hope they'll do a double turn here. And I don't know, the way they've booked it, I mean, I could go on for hours about how big of a fuck-up this is. I mean, you have the mishandling of the Divas Revolution going on at the same time, and while that's all going on, they've turned Lana from a strong, powerful woman who was holding her own on the mic with The Rock face-to-face. She was handling her shit. She was in control. And they have turned her into nothing more than Dolph Ziggler's accessory. She's just there to look good and be on Dolph's arm.
And she's broken. She just had surgery. She won't be back for a couple weeks.
Yeah, so it hurts the storyline even more. So it's literally just a completely broken storyline, and it needs to be fucking just wrapped up like ASAP. And like we've said it before, like Rusev came in as this like big tough dude that doesn't fucking lose matches, and now all of a sudden he's relegated to this shit. And it's literally going nowhere. Like, there's been so many matches that have ended with, like, the arm candy coming up on the apron and fucking something up, and then getting a roll-up pin, which is exactly what happened at Night of Champions with Summer Rae. So Ziggler gets the win, and the story continues to tread water and not go anywhere.
Yeah. It's just, as you said, it's broken, it's stupid, and they need to get beyond phony little love triangles, Because anybody with a brain and a smartphone knows exactly what happens when Lana leaves the arena. She's still going home with Rusev to their awesome house in Nashville. So, like, the people just don't buy this. It's like when they tried to say Daniel Bryan cheated on Brie Bella. It's like nobody with a fucking brain even believed that for a second. So, I mean, like, when they try to inject that really bad lovers tryst love triangle, no one buys it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There's been a lot of speculation. It looks a lot like almost as Vince wants Lana and Rusev to split up, and so he's throwing them in this storyline for that to happen.
Just don't get married. That's fine. Just fall out of love. If I keep booking you apart, you guys will break up.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened in the business either.
Yeah, I mean, the business...
It worked with Triple H in China. It'll work again.
That's how Chris Benoit got his wife before that all went down.
Yeah, and a lot of them get together because of their storylines. But I think, honestly, it's just so bad that there's nowhere it's going to go that's any good at all, and I don't think anybody's interested in it anymore. It's just a, like, time-consuming thing. It takes up a good portion of Raw, and that's essentially what they're looking for in this mid-card. And it's sad because you got two guys that could be on a higher level as far as the card goes. But then we'll move on to New Day and Dudley Boys because actually this was a really good match, I thought.
Yeah.
It ended in a DQ, so New Day retains. But the Dudley Boys look not bad at all, like not half bad for their age. And, you know, they're putting on good shows. The New Day is really stepping up because I really like... I don't really like the fact that Xavier Woods is sort of the spokesperson because I feel like he has talent and he should be in the ring. Yeah. It's come down to just, you know, like Big E and Kofi being the tag team and then Xavier being the manager. But I think that this feud, like, it's somewhat interesting. Like, I actually pay attention to this part of the show. And it's hard to... Like I said, in that mid-card space, it's hard to find something that you actually care about.
Yeah, this feud definitely does have legs, but again, I feel like it really doesn't have that much to do with the booking. It has been carried almost completely by the strength of the New Day's performance over the past few weeks. And that's not to say that the Dudley Boys haven't been doing their part. They're holding their own in the ring, but they've been almost non-existent in the promos and in the build-up to these matches. The New Day are carrying that all through sheer force of personality. And it's sad. At this point, the New Day is one of maybe 3 or 4 acts that I actually give a shit about in the company. And 2 of the acts that I would give a shit about, they're in terrible feuds that I just can't care about. You've got Rusev, as we just spoke of, saddled with this Ziggler feud. You've got Cesaro getting chumped by the Big Show, which is just disgusts me.
Yeah, well, that's all because of the Lesnar thing coming up.
You know, which is said they're basically jobbing out Cesaro to build to a glorified house show.
Yeah, I think the feud, like we said, like it has potential. Like New Day with the whole like Save the Tables campaign, and the Dudley Boys being the table-centric tag team. But Xavier goes through the table at the end. They 3D him through the table. And we move on to Charlotte and Nikki Bella, unless you have anything to say there, Tim.
No, not really. I mean, New Day has been as much of a flop we thought that was going to be coming into it. They've really taken what was a really shitty gimmick from the start and just flourished with it, and it's entertaining to watch, and I'm glad that they're still like the focus of the division. Dudley Boys bring a lot to the table, but like you said, off to Charlotte and Nikki.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said with the New Day, it's like you come off with like you come in and nobody likes you, and the gimmick seems dead, but they like the creative team stuck with it, and they didn't do that with the Ascension, and I thought that was kind of bullshit. But yeah, Charlotte and Nikki for the Divas Championship, like. I mean, this was essentially just Nikki dominating most of the match, and then Charlotte, like, pulling the win out of her ass, which, like, I guess they just kind of wanted to, like, make Nikki look strong after this stupid, like, this whole streak of her being the longest reigning champ, even though she didn't defend the belt. We've talked about that a bunch, and that was just stupid. but they gave her a good portion of the offense in this match, only to have Charlotte do the figure 8, figure 4, whatever the hell it is, and have Nikki tap out. I think we all pretty much assumed that Charlotte would be the first to take the Divas belt as far as the Divas Revolution goes, because she was the first to, get to that point in NXT. I think she carried the most momentum. Well, probably not, actually. I feel like Sasha Banks most likely carried the most momentum into the main roster, but I think we all thought that Charlotte was probably going to take it first.
Yeah, I mean, this was a little bit of a hard match to care about because of the way they handled it on the previous week of Raw and SmackDown, where you had that beat the clock challenge, and then you had Charlotte getting her match, hoping to prevent Nikki from becoming the longest reigning champion, and when she failed at that was your major comeuppance that you wanted to see the heel get, and that didn't happen. So at that point, it was pretty evident that Charlotte was going to beat Nikki at the pay-per-view, but the stakes were already lowered, and there just wasn't that much going on in the build-up to the match anymore.
Yeah.
They blew their load prematurely, basically.
Yeah, there was no sense in having them have that match before the pay-per-view. Really just kind of ruined it. It became predictable. And, like, with that whole beat the clock thing, we were talking about it earlier, and it's like, you have, like, who was it? Was it Paige and Becky Lynch that were going for it, too? Or was it Sasha? Yeah. Oh, yeah, Sasha Banks
it was all PCB.
Yeah. So you had, like, Paige and either Brie Bella or Alicia Fox, and then you had Becky Lynch and either Brie Bella or Alicia Fox, I don't remember. And then you have Charlotte, who comes in and has to face Sasha Banks, which makes literally no sense. Like, as far as competition, and kayfabe, like, why would that make any sense? Why would that be fair to her? And then, it's really just reinforced the fact that we're going to see Charlotte with that belt.
And it's a shame, is that really canonized the idea of Team Bad not even being relevant in the discussion.
Yeah,
the whole stable feud that they had going on. It really set them a class down if that hadn't already been done.
Yeah.
By having PCB win all the matches.
I mean, their name is Bad. Like,
yeah.
Like, you can't really get any worse than that. And, like...
And just to rub it in, they put Tamina on the team to make it obvious.
Yeah, and she does literally nothing. So it's like, that whole team is just because Sasha Banks is there, and it doesn't make any sense because Sasha's character wouldn't have been in that situation, like, to begin with. She wouldn't have aligned herself with these people. So it was broken from the start, in my opinion, the whole thing was.
I thought their team should have just been called Resting Bitch Face.
It's too good.
So Charlotte walks away with the belt. Ric Flair ends up in the ring, cry, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, which I think they had to have Ric Flair in there just to put over that the moment mattered somewhat,
Yeah.
Just because they nuked that idea so hard in the build-up.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, it was over the top. It really didn't. I mean, it got the idea across that this was a big deal, but it just wasn't as much as it should have been. Like, you knew they were just going too far with it.
Yeah. And then on Raw the next day, we saw, like, PCB in the ring doing this whole celebration again for the Charlotte win. And then Paige goes rogue and, like, talks shit. And that's good because now I feel like these teams are going to be essentially, donezo, because now you don't have the three trios teams, I guess you could say. It's a Lucha Underground reference. But, I mean, like we said, those teams were never really teams because you got Nikki Bella, who just has these two, like thugs, I guess, for lack of a better term. And then you got Sasha Banks with her two, buddies just chilling there who don't do anything. So that team breaking up is the best thing that could possibly happen for the Divas division at this point.
And it really does feel like they're trying to get away from that section of the story. It feels like they're going to try to actually salvage the whole Divas Revolution thing, so it is a positive development, but at the same time, it seems to be coming at the cost of marginalizing Becky Lynch.
Yep.
Which is a shame, because I do tend to think she has the most potential as a complete package out of the three.
Yeah.
Paige, she's not bad, but she's already had her moment. Charlotte, she's going to have her push no matter what. That's pretty clear at this point. But Becky, she can just put it all together in a way that I'm not sure the other two can.
Yeah, and I was going to say that too. It's like, I like the whole Paige, like, you know, going rogue type thing, but I would have rather seen Becky Lynch do it, personally. Yeah. Because now you got Becky Lynch who's just, like, stuck in this spot with Charlotte, and it's like, how is she going to break that off? Like, how are they going to break that situation? Like, I don't want to see Becky Lynch just being a cheerleader for Charlotte, that's for sure.
Yeah. And if you had Becky go rogue, that's almost the female equivalent of Seth Rollins being the one to turn on the Shield, where nobody was expecting it to play out like that, and it just happens to turn out there's good reasoning behind it, and it's executed all right. I mean, I feel like it would have had that same connotation behind it, where you would have thought, oh wow, so these guys really mean something if they're getting that same sort of storyline that the Shield got before their main event pushes.
Yeah. And I think, like, Becky's character would be well suited for that kind of thing, just to be a solo character. I mean, she was way better as a solo character anyway, and she never really did much in this 3-person team. So, I guess I would say we all would like Becky Lynch to get a good push in the near future.
I mean, she's the last kicker. She's probably my favorite one out there. I mean, it's kind of tough because Sasha Banks is the most complete wrestler out there. She's probably the best diva on the roster. But we've already seen Sasha hold the title in NXT. I mean, it's obvious she's going to hold the Divas Championship, but I think it's time to get somebody like Becky Lynch, who I've never seen hold a title, you know, have that opportunity to shine. I mean, they're all going to get their chance as long as they continue to take this seriously.
Yeah, and it seems like Paige might be next in line just because of that, what happened on Raw. But now it's like I'd rather see Sasha Banks be next in line, and if Paige is next in line, I think they can feud Paige and Sasha Banks before a Charlotte match. So there's a lot of ways they can go with that division now. And, you know, like I said, I feel like all these teams breaking up is the best thing they can do. And you don't have to have just one Divas match on the card. You can throw 2 in there now that you have a large roster, a relatively girthy roster, I guess. But I guess we'll move on to the Wyatts, who Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose were looking for a partner on the hype train to Night of Champions. It was a question who it was going to be leading up to the pay-per-view, and it turns out it's Y2J.
I feel it's almost become Jericho's gimmick to be the surprise return guy.
Yeah.
And so when it happens, it's not even a surprise. And I feel bad for being so let down by a Jericho return, but I don't much want to see him.
We were promised so much better. We had a feeling it was going to be something realistic and great. But, I mean, Chris Jericho, it's so tired and true, like you said, that, like, he was a good fallback, but it almost feels like they wasted the whole idea of who's going to be this mystery man.
Yeah. But Jericho ends up being the reason they lose the match. So, you know, you got to question, like, is Jericho going to be in a feud with Ambrose or Reigns? Like, more likely Ambrose. And it all depends on whether or not Chris Jericho is going to go full-time for a short stint like he did with, I think his last one was with Wyatt, actually.
Yeah. Back in the, summer of last year before Wyatt had his feud with Ambrose.
Yep.
So they're all just kind of like circling around each other. It just makes sense that it would be Ambrose's time around, since Reigns has Wyatt, but I mean, I would like to see something come of it, especially if it's a Chris Jericho heel turn, which I mean is what we're seeing. But if it was him and Dean Ambrose going one-on-one, I think that would make some great matches, especially to round out the fall heading into WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to bring Jericho into this, but I think we expected someone else because of the way that it was hyped up.
Especially when they're like saying, "Oh, it could be Baron Corbin, it could be Samoa Joe, it could have been half a dozen guys." Then all of a sudden, when you're getting ready, I mean, I was getting a little antsy. I was getting a bit of goosebumps because I'm like, okay, this could be like a huge wrestling moment. This could be somebody's debut. It could be literally the best thing that's going to happen in this part of the wrestling season. And you just hear, "Bow, bow, bow, breaking down the walls," and it's like, all right, cool, we've seen this.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, actually, no. The last time we saw Jericho, now that I think about it, was in Japan.
Yeah, battling
Neville.
Neville. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess hopefully he's back for a short amount of time to feud with somebody, and he does like we've said it on the show that he likes to come back and give these guys a rub. The guys that he feels like deserve it. And he likes to work with the young talent, so I think he might come back and just work with preferably Ambrose for a little while, and boost Ambrose to the point where he should be. Ambrose kind of fell from grace a little bit. He was up there at he was facing Rollins not too long ago for the title, and now he's in this Wyatt family feud. So it's interesting to see where this goes, because now you got the Wyatts with a new member, and you also have when does Rowan come back? Does anybody know? What?
He's about to start rehabbing at the Performance Center, so you probably won't see him until Survivor Series or Tables, Ladders, and Chairs.
So I'm wondering where he's gonna fit in that puzzle, but obviously we won't be able to see that until somewhere down the line. It'll become more evident. So we'll move on to the U.S. title. This is Seth Rollins' first of 2 matches for the night. He defends both belts. Obviously, Night of Champions, all the titles are up for grabs. So we've already seen 2 title changes up to this point. The Intercontinental title was taken off of Ryback, given to Kevin Owens. Charlotte took the Divas belt off of Nikki, and now John Cena and Seth Rollins, and you get Cena takes his gold back. Another good match. We've seen Cena and Rollins a million times this year, but I like having Cena have the U.S. title. It's better than having Seth Rollins carry two belts, because there's really no reason for that.
Yeah, it's better than having Cena in the main event scene right now too.
Yeah. So, I mean, with Rollins carrying 2 belts, it really takes away from what the U.S. title meant, especially after Cena built it up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been really great to have Cena get that title back, because I know they're about to unload a lot of merch about how he's going to have the U.S. title again. But it's so cluttering to have Seth Rollins hold 2 titles every week,
yeah,
quote unquote defend them every week, and if the title's on the line, it's either a DQ or he wins, or if the title's not on the line, you can almost guarantee he's going to lose. I mean, it's just so much Seth Rollins that's getting diluted and getting wasted that having him hold both titles ruins all the momentum that they gave both titles.
Yeah, and the second match is Rollins and Sting, which Rollins ends up winning with a freaking roll-up, and Sting got injured in this match during one of the turnbuckle powerbombs. Actually, he said it was both of them that actually fucked him up, but the second one more than the first. But now it's like you got Rollins winning, but like, how strong does Rollins even look at this point? He really doesn't look that strong as far as the storylines go, because you have him either losing to guys like Cena, or you just have him like leaving matches or getting DQ'd and just keeping the belt in any way that's possible. And I understand he has to be the weasel heel, but at some point you got to give him somewhat of a credible win, at least at this point.
Yeah, I feel like that'll become evident at probably Night of Champions. He'll probably get some kind of title match that he'll get his redemption moment. But I mean, it's going to be weird if he's holding that title come WrestleMania season, because then do you have Roman Reigns win Royal Rumble again? Do you have Dean Ambrose do it? I mean, they're just kind of setting themselves up for a repeat of last year, where they're going to play out WrestleMania and make it so obvious this far in advance that it's just no fun to watch.
Yeah. So Sting tries to pop on a Scorpion Deathlock, and Rollins rolls him over, gets the 3 count, and then he rolls out of the ring. He's like against the announce table or whatever. Sheamus's music hits. Once Rollins is back in the ring, Sheamus comes down, tries to cash in, and the referee does that whole "oh my god, I don't know what to do" sort of thing, and because they always have to stall, they can't just cash the goddamn briefcase in, and then Kane's music hits, and it's Demon Kane with his mask, which was a nice surprise because I think a lot of people have been waiting for Kane to sort of do this again. And it's sort of like, I feel like Kane's relevant all of a sudden again. And it's nice. I think it's I don't know exactly where the story's going to go from here, but on Raw we saw Kane return again, and he also was, he was sort of like, they had him playing 2 characters, like a split personality sort of thing. And at the end of Raw, Kane pops up from the ring and pulls Rollins under. I thought that was really interesting. That's some old school Kane right there.
Yeah, I think the split personality way is probably the best way to go with the character right now, because otherwise you just go back to the 2 or 3 months ago where you had corporate Kane going back and forth on whether or not he supported Rollins or whatever. And unless you want to have more of that ad infinitum, that's a really good way to go with the character. I think it hasn't really been done too recently. I mean, I'm not sure enough to say has it been done before or not, but it's a little bit of a new spin on it, considering where we've been lately.
Yeah.
That it serves its purpose.
Because Kane was so stale, and like I think everybody who was watching was getting sick of Kane and Big Show, and now it's like you got Kane at a point where, like, it's funny because it's something so simple as putting on a mask that it brings him back to a certain level of relevance, and I think it's going to be interesting the way they do it. But Kane comes out and choke slams Rollins, choke slams Sheamus, tombstones Rollins, and that wraps up Night of Champions.
And that pop he got when he chokeslammed Seth Rollins, that was unreal for Kane. So, I mean, they've done something at least a little bit right with the bringing him back as the Demon.
Yeah, and they waited a long time to do it, but, I think it's refreshing to have him come back at this point. And
this is still earlier than we thought.
Well, yeah.
He wasn't supposed to come back until Survivor Series.
Yeah, and he's, at this point, when he comes back and does this, he's, like, gearing up to retire. And I think, like, honestly, like, at this point, you have Kane, like, Demon Kane, and you have Undertaker somewhat active at the same time. So it'd be interesting to see, like, a Brothers of Destruction reunite sort of maybe storyline there. Or even if they had a match against each other, that'd be pretty sick, too.
I think what you're going to see is Kane go against Seth Rollins for the rest of the year. Like at Hell in a Cell, Survivor Series, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. And I actually think in one of the matches, I think Kane's at least going to win that title off Seth. Seth will probably win it back like in a week or 2. But I would almost rather see Kane and The Undertaker go against one another, almost like a brothers feud, and that could kind of retire The Undertaker. Because outside of Sting, that's probably the only other person I'd rather have retire The Undertaker would be Kane.
Yeah, exactly. That's a bold prediction, saying Kane might take that belt, but I could see it. I wanted Sting to take this belt now. And, even if he has it for a week, it's a title reign for a belt that he's never had. And now at this point, he's hurt. And, most likely he'll come back for a match. But he's not going to be... his workload's been increased, like, dramatically in the last couple weeks. So you're not going to see him for a while, most likely. And obviously after the injury, you don't want him to have the belt. But it would have been nice to see Sting carry the belt for a short amount of time, even if Rollins wins it off of him. Because Rollins, like we said, needs a clean win, and it would be nice to see that happen.
Yeah.
So that's it for Night of Champions. Is there anything on Raw that we want to talk about?
I mean, not really, except that we still have no resolution to Ambrose and Jericho.
Yeah, I mean, we somewhat talked about Raw, like during that whole thing, but I mean, I didn't necessarily see any parts in Raw where I was completely satisfied with. I thought it was somewhat of a boring show. They had Rollins and Cena in a rematch, which we've already seen it again, so why do we need to see it once more on Raw? And Cena wins it again, so it's like a never-ending feud there. I don't know. I think we pretty much covered what we want to cover. There was a lot of space between SummerSlam and Night of Champions that we didn't get to talk about, but I think the main points we pretty much talked about, like the debut of Braun Strowman, the Dudleys coming back. So I guess we're just looking forward to somewhat of where these storylines go. For season 3, we'll be doing podcasts somewhat regularly, hopefully.
Definitely.
And thank you for listening. Because if you've listened to us for the last 2 seasons, we appreciate it. Because I can't even bear to listen to myself after I record it.
Yeah, I think I maybe listened to 2 of these all the way through over the whole span of the 2 seasons.
Between the 2 podcasts that I put out, the other one that I have is weekly, and I don't think I've heard a single note from all of that. I get Snapchats of people telling me they're listening to it, and I'm just like, why? My voice is not anything worth listening to.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and plug that podcast if you want.
Yeah, if you guys want to check that out, it's a new advice podcast hosted by me and my roommate out here in Buffalo. You can check us out on Facebook at Never Have I Ever Show. Twitter, NHIE Show, on the Twitter sphere, whatever you want to call it. And we just started posting some backlogs of our videos up on YouTube, so you can check that out. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a cute little advice show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to listen to, too, because I've listened to a couple episodes, and it gets really interesting.
Awkward.
Yeah, interesting, I guess you could say. But thanks to you 2 guys, because you guys are the only ones that actually show up regularly.
Gary.
Bill's been here since the beginning, and Tim, you came in somewhat later on, but we've all been somewhat consistent compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I think Tim's been on Robert Lewandowski, getting subbed in the second half and scoring the 5 goals in 9 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. As long as I'm available, yeah, I have no problem.
All right, so we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the season 3 premiere.
Same.
Check us out on Facebook. Subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. We're gonna probably start live tweeting some shows. And we'll see you next time.
Same.